Hey everyone, how's it going? Mike here with a brand new Pokemon TCG video, and this deck list was actually suggested to me by an individual whose name also happens to be Michael, which is kind of ironic, right? Because Mike is showcasing the deck for Mike. Anyways, moving on, this deck is a speed Reshiram deck, and it has some fantastic consistency, and the deck is actually very powerful. So of course, what would a Reshiram deck be without a Reshiram? We'll be running a total of 4 copies of the Reshiram, pretty much the sole attacker of our deck. We could potentially attack with the Shaman EX from time to time, but Reshiram is, of course, going to be the main attacker of our deck. So it has 2 different attacks. We're going to be focusing on trying to make use of that Blue Flare attack, which requires a total of 3 energy cards, and whenever we use it, we have to discard 2 of our fire energy cards attached to this Pokemon into our discard pile. So you guys are probably thinking at this point, well, you're a little crazy. How exactly are we going to repeatedly make use of that Blue Flare attack? Well, the fire decks have a very solid supporter card, and that is the Blacksmith, which allows us to attach 2 fire energy cards from our discard pile onto one of our Pokemon. So it's very possible that we will be repeatedly attacking with that Blue Flare attack, and when our Reshiram is getting to dangerously low HP levels, that's when we'll be able to start making use of the Outrage attack. So now you guys are probably thinking, well, how exactly are you going to have such good consistency with respect to using the Blacksmith? Well, we have a lot of cards that offer us some tremendous draw support, but though definitely one of the most important cards of this deck is going to be the Battle Compressor, because it will allow us to get those fire energy cards in our discard pile, which is exactly where we want them to be, and then those Blacksmiths can allow us to retrieve them and latch them on to those Pokemon. So we will be running a total of 3 copies of the Battle Compressor in our deck. We also have a lot of draw supporter cards, as I mentioned earlier. So one of those draw supporter cards is going to be the Acrobike. We'll be running a total of 3 copies of them. This can simultaneously allow us to draw onto a useful card and hopefully get those fire energy cards in our discard pile. So Acrobike is quite nice. We are running 3 copies of it. We're also running a total of 4 copies of the Trainer's Mail, just to try and increase the consistency with which we can ultimately draw into the cards that we need, such as the VS Seekers, for example, the Blacksmiths, things like that. Trainer's Mail works quite well in this deck, especially given the fact that when you take a close look at our deck, we have 43 trainer cards, so Trainer's Mail is almost never going to fail us unless we get extremely unlucky. We're also only running a total of 10 energy cards and 7 Pokemon. Speaking of our second Pokemon, that is going to be the Shaman EX. It has the setup ability, and of course, as its ability suggests, it's going to help us set up those Reshirams and get the cards that we need to be able to consistently attack. So Shaman EX is a pretty nice card in this deck. We are ultimately running a total of 3 copies of it. We're also going to be running the Computer Search as our A-Spec card. Again, just for the sake of consistency and speed, Computer Search is by far the A-Spec card that works the best with this respective deck. We're also going to be running a single copy of the Sacred Ash. This is just in case all of our Reshirams go in our discard pile, and or for example we happen to have some of them prized. Sacred Ash will allow us to retrieve those Pokemon, put them back into our deck. So Sacred Ash is definitely a very useful and helpful card. We are running a single copy of that. We're going to be running a single copy of the Lysander to allow us to lure out any of the opponent's bench Pokemon. Alternatively, we also have a card that functions similarly to Lysander, which is going to be the Pokemon Catcher. Now, what makes Pokemon Catcher a bit of a unique card is that, as the ability here suggests, it says switch your opponent's active Pokemon with one of his or her bench Pokemon. It doesn't mention any flip coin requirements, but there is actually flip coin requirements, unfortunately. Just keep in mind that there is a coin flip required, so we need to get a head to ultimately drag out one of the opponent's bench Pokemon as their active Pokemon. So it works quite similarly to the Lysander, but there is a bit of a risk involved in that we could potentially flip a Tails. The remainder of our cards, guys, are pretty self-explanatory, but I do briefly want to discuss the Stadium card and the Hypnotoxic Laser. So for Bank City Gym, definitely a Stadium card that you guys are quite familiar and acquainted with. I'm sure you guys have faced a barrage of Seismitoad EX decks recently. Luckily for you guys, they will be getting rotated out. Well, the Verbank City Gym and Hypnotoxic Laser will be getting rotated out very soon. So Verbank City Gym is going to allow us to stack some additional poison damage onto the opponent's Pokemon. So of course we're going to be running a total of 4 copies of the Hypnotoxic Laser, and ultimately when we pair up the Hypnotoxic Laser with the Verbank City Gyms and we pair those up with either the Silver Bangles or the Muscle Bands, we will ultimately be able to knock out those EX Pokemon. So Silver Bangle plus the Laser Banks and the Blue Flare, we can hit for that magic 180 to EX Pokemon. And of course the Muscle Band would also allow us to hit for that 170 damage to any of the opponent's EX Pokemon, and of course quite a bit more damage to any of our opponent's non-EX Pokemon as well. So pretty cool deck strategy. But yeah, most of the remainder of our cards are pretty self-explanatory, guys. So we're running a single copy of the Switch to allow us to switch in between those Pokemon. Ideally, you would save it in instances where we have the Shaymin EX dragged out by a card such as Lysander, and then we can simply switch out onto a Reshiram. We have a total of 4 copies of the Ultra Ball to allow us to either grab onto those Shaymin EXs or those Reshirams. 4 VS Seekers to hopefully repeatedly make use of the Blacksmith the Blacksmith supporter card. But of course we can use it for any of our remaining supporter cards. We have the Lysander, again I've already discussed it, a single copy of the N and 4 copies of the Juniper for some draw support, and ultimately a total of 10 energy cards. 6 of them are fire energies and 4 of them are the double colors energies. So with that, guys, let's go and find ourselves an opponent and just see how powerful this deck is. Again, where this deck's strength really comes from is the fact that it has some pretty fantastic consistency. I mean, we're almost always able to attack starting from turn 1 with the Blue Flare attack. In certain instances we're not, but that's really when we happen to get unlucky. Awesome, looks like we're going to be able to start off first. I think based on the opponent's deck, I think it's going to be a Night March deck. Yeah, so we are seeing all those Lampents already. Hopefully our deck can hit for more damage than the opponents ultimately can, and we actually have a pretty terrible start. My goodness, we have a Shaymin EX as our active Pokemon. And this is just a terrible start. Okay, so let's go and Lysander out the opponent's Pumpkaboo. I'm gonna go and attach a double colors energy onto that Shaymin EX. I'm hoping we don't lose turn 1, because I mean there's not really a whole lot I can do in case we really do. So I'm gonna go and get rid of 2 fire energy cards and send those into our discard pile, and I'm also gonna send a Juniper into that discard pile as well. Actually, I'm gonna go and send the N just in case we draw onto a VS Seeker, because we are ultimately running a total of 4 copies of that in our deck. And unfortunately, guys, I have to end the turn. This is by far the worst start that I've ever had with this deck. So I'm hoping we don't see Dimension Valley, because if we do, this could spell the end for us. We're going to see the town map. The opponent's going to reveal some cards from his prize cards. We're going to see the Ultra Ball, possibly Shaymin EX, to allow our opponent to have a little bit of draw support. Again, though, if we don't see the Dimension Valley, we should be able to survive at least a turn. Awesome. I'm just very thankful for that. So I'll absolutely be using the Ultra Ball to get another Shaymin EX. I think would be a pretty good option. Blacksmith, I mean, I have 2 fire energy cards in our discard pile. So let's go and get rid of the Verbank City Gym. And I guess we're going to go and get rid of the Blacksmith as well, and draw onto another one of our Shaymin EXs. Maybe I should have actually laid down that Verbank City Gym and gotten rid of the Switch card instead, but I'm not sure. I mean, that Switch may just come in handy. So let's go and lay down that Shaymin EX, draw into some additional cards. Let's go and use the Acro Bike for the Hypnotoxic Laser. Computer Search would also be quite good, because I could, of course, use it to look for a Reshiram and knock out the opponent's Pumpkaboo. So I'm thinking, I mean, yeah, you know what, guys? I think I'm gonna go and grab onto that Computer Search. Alternatively, Muscle Band, and yeah, let's go and actually grab onto that Computer Search. So I think I'm gonna be bringing out a Reshiram, guys. So let's go and use the Computer Search to get rid of I'll definitely be making use of that Switch, or actually I'm gonna just go and retreat that Shaymin EX. So let's go and get rid of the Switch card, and let's go and get rid of a fire energy card to look for a Reshiram. So let's see where one of those are. I'm actually also going to take a look at and see how many remaining Reshirams we have in our deck. So that's 2 Reshirams. Okay, so we actually have all 4 of them in our deck, so that is quite nice. Let's go and lay it down and attach the double colors energy onto it. The Silver Bangle. Just realized that we actually sent all of our sorry, what all of our fire energy cards in our discard pile. I didn't even have a blacksmith in our hand. That was really stupid of me. I should have used that computer search for a blacksmith instead. Let's go and use that juniper for some new cards in our hand. Trainer's mail. Hope that we have the hypnotoxic laser. Unfortunately, does not look like we do. I do have the Pokemon catcher, however, that could potentially allow me to knock out the Joltik. So let's actually go and grab that out. Let's go and use that Pokemon catcher. Are we going to get the heads? No, it looks like we're going to get a tail. So let's go and lay down the Verbank City Gym. The Silver Bangle, no. I mean, I don't have any Pokemon that can really take advantage of that just yet. Let's get rid of that Juniper and that Double Colorless Energy to look for one more of our last Shaman EXs. I'm really hoping to knock out the opponent's Joltik. I mean, the prize exchange really has to be in our favor for this game to work. And awesome, looks like we're going to draw to a Hypnotoxic Laser and a Muscle Band. I'm going to go and latch that on to that Shaman EX. So we'll be able to hit for exactly the right amount of damage to knock out that Pumpkaboo. So let's go and use that Sky Return, knock out the opponent's Pumpkaboo, and then bring out the Reshiram temporarily as our active Pokemon. The Verbank City Gym will allow us to grab that knockout. So we've already gone through quite a bit of our deck, and I believe this is only turn 2. So as you guys can see, this deck really lives up to the name of a speed Reshiram deck. And again, there's not really a whole lot of consistency issues just because this deck is just so quick, and that Joltik is only going to hit just for a mere 60 damage, so that is a bit unfortunate on the opponent's end. Let's go and use that Trainer's Mail, and we have the Blacksmith option or the Ultra Ball. I think what we really need is another Reshiram on our bench right now, so I'm gonna go and get rid of that Shaman EX. And let's go and get rid of a fire energy card as well. I think we can afford to spare some since we could always make use of those blacksmith cards. Let's go and lay down a Reshiram again. This Reshiram can actually hit for quite a bit of damage, so that is quite nice. I'm gonna go and use the VS Seeker to look for the blacksmith card and load up our benched Reshiram with a couple of fire energy cards. So let's go and latch those onto him. I'm gonna go and attach an additional fire energy card onto that Reshiram. Let's go and use that outrage attack, hitting that Joltik for 80 damage, and that will allow us to snatch up one prize card. So we're definitely at a prize card advantage. Again, the opponent's deck is also supposed to be a very quick and efficient one, but he actually doesn't have any Night March Pokemon in his bench. We're going to be seeing the N. That's going to reduce the number of cards in our hand. Awesome, looks like we're going to draw onto an additional Reshiram, and I also have the VS Seeker. Currently our Reshiram can only hit for 80 damage plus 30 damage with the Silver Bangle, so it would still fall 10 HP short from being able to knock out that Mew EX unless we draw onto a Hypnotoxic Laser. But of course, just to ensure that the opponent's Mew EX loses its life, okay, it looks like it's actually going to use the Sky Return attack, so we're actually going to be able to win the game. Let's go and use that Outrage attack and find ourselves another opponent. So I mean, I'm not really sure. Maybe the opponent had just given up at this point because they didn't exactly have the greatest start. And cool, looks like I've just gotten myself a Furious Fist pack from the Wheel of Fortune, I guess you could call it. So we're finding ourselves an additional opponent, and yeah, so this Reshiram deck is pretty fantastic. It's a bit unfortunate though that it will also be rotating out, but we could theoretically make use of most of the cards that you guys are seeing in this deck and instead swap out those Reshirams for Camera Up EXs, for example, maybe even the Charizard EXs as well, especially since we're going to be seeing a whole lot of fire decks in the new set. Unfortunately though, what we really need is a powerful non-EX fire type Pokemon, and we're actually getting a couple of those as well. Those Entei look pretty cool, so I think it could potentially replace the Reshiram in its entirety. Looks like we're going to start off with the Shaman EX once again. Shaman EX for some reason just really not liking me, but we definitely have a much better hand this time around. Alright, so let's go and use that Acrobike and see what we draw into. Okay, I have a Lysander, Double Colorless Energy. I think we're gonna go and look for that Double Colorless Energy. Let's go and use that Trainer's Mail and the Hypnotoxic Laser. Yes, that is absolutely the card that I will be using. Let's go and lay down the Verbank City Gem, the Hypnotoxic Laser to hit that Groudon EX for a little bit of damage. As long as it hasn't evolved into the Primal Groudon EX, this is definitely a very good sign for us. I think we're gonna need a Pokemon on our bench, so I'm gonna go and use that computer search to get rid of the Blacksmith and the VS Seeker to look for our very first Reshiram, which I will be laying down. So let's go and bring out that Reshiram, attach the Double Colorless Energy to it, the Juniper for some new cards in our hand. Let's go and lay down an additional Reshiram, and I think I'm gonna hold off on the remainder of our cards, at least for the time being. and see what the opponent decides to do. Alright, so it looks like that Groudon EX is going to remain asleep. So that is absolutely going to work in our favor. I may potentially retreat that Shaman EX by attaching a Fire Energy card to it and then bringing out that Reshiram. We should be able to knock out the opponent's Groudon EX, hopefully, but I still need a card such as the Muscle Band, because that Groudon EX now only takes 10 damage in between turns. Yeah, looks like we're going to see the Hawlucha make its appearance. Gonna hit our Shaman EX for a massive 80 damage. Luckily for us, that Shaman EX is gonna be able to survive, so that is kind of nice. But we should be able to get rid of the opponent's Reshiram relatively easily. So let's start off by using the Trainer's Mail and see what we can draw into. Okay, so I have a Sacred Ash, Furbank City Gym, or the Juniper. I'm not really sure. I mean, we don't have any Pokemon in our discard pile just yet, so definitely not gonna be looking for that Sacred Ash. I think we should go for the Furbank City Gym instead, guys. I think it's going to be the most useful out of the remainder of the cards, because I'm going to try and repeatedly make use of the Blacksmith card. So let's go and use that Battle Compressor, get a couple of our Fire Energy cards into that discard pile. So that is one Fire Energy, two Fire Energies. I think two Fire Energies should be enough for now, because Blue Flare is repeatedly going to send them back into that discard pile. Let's go and attach a Fire Energy card onto that Shaman EX. Let's go retreat it, bring out our Reshiram, and then use the Blacksmith to attach two Fire Energy cards to it, and then we'll be able to hit our opponent for 120 damage using the Blue Flare attack and drawing onto a prize card. Awesome. I mean, once that Primal Groudon EX comes out, though, it's probably going to give us a pretty difficult time. Primal Groudon EX is definitely a very fearsome and powerful Pokemon. We're going to be seeing the End card. Luckily for us, we have the VS Seeker. Again, we have a total of 4 in our deck, and we also have 4 Blacksmiths in our deck as well. So definitely no issues there with respects to getting those Fire Energy cards latched on to those Reshirams. So I probably will be grabbing onto those the Blacksmiths once again. Looks like we're going to be seeing a switch, a strong energy card, and the Primal Groudon EX making its appearance, so we're not going to be able to drag it out at this point. I mean, at this point, I mean, the Furbank City Gym isn't particularly useful just yet, so I'm going to go and attach a double colors energy card onto that Reshiram. Let's go and use that VS Seeker for the Blacksmith card, which will of course allow us to knock out the opponent's Reshiram. So let's go and grab those 2 Fire Energy cards and latch it onto our Pokemon. Gonna hold off on the remainder of our cards for the time being. Could definitely make use of that Shaman EX later on. Let's go and use that Blue Flare, hitting the Hawlucha for 120 damage once again, allowing us to draw onto a prize card. Now, the opponent could potentially attack with the Primal Groudon EX if he draws into a whole lot of the Turbo Flare, the Mega Turbo cards. We're going to be seeing a Landorus, possibly another switch. I mean, it looks like the opponent just has no shortage of switch cards in his deck. But yeah, so another switch, my goodness, what is that? 2 switches already, and an additional switch card in their hand. We're going to see Muscle Band getting latched onto that Primal Groudon EX, and a switch card. Not really sure if that Landorus, yeah, it's not going to be able to attack, because again, we did see that Karina going into our opponent's discard pile. And okay, so I need to hit our opponent for at least 120 damage this time around. Let's go and lay down a Furbank City Gem. I'm gonna go and get rid of one of our Shaman EXs, guys. So let's go and get rid of one Shaman EX and a Muscle Band. No, you know what? I think Muscle Band is pretty useful, so let's actually go and get rid of a Fire Energy card. Look for an additional Reshiram, which I will be laying down into our bench. And oops, sorry, that was a mistake. I wanted to lay down the Reshiram, but unfortunately I've laid down the Shaman EX, so let's draw onto some additional cards. Lay down an additional Reshiram, the Muscle Band onto that Reshiram, the Ultra Ball getting rid of the Juniper, and the Furbank City Gym. I should have one more Shaman EX in our deck. Just taking a look at our discard pile. No, it actually happens to be in our discard pile. Yeah, sorry, I actually got rid of that. So let's go and use that Ultra Ball, guys, and draw onto our very last Reshiram before I do use the Professor Juniper. Alright, so I'm going to go and attach a Fire Energy card. Well, we should be able to get rid of our opponent's Landorus without too much difficulty. I'm hoping I can draw onto a, what's it called, the Hypnotoxic Laser. I think Sacred Ash would be the card to grab onto, just a very important card to allow us to recycle our Pokemon. Let's go and use that Acrobike, a Blacksmith, or a Double Colors Energy. I do have another Blacksmith in our hand, but still just such a useful card. I think I'm going to go and grab onto another one. Let's go and attach a Fire Energy card onto the active Reshiram or the bench one. I think I'm going to go for the benched Reshiram for now, guys. Should be able to make use of that Blacksmith during our next turn. Let's go and use that Outrage, hitting that Landorus for 40 damage. But we should be able to get rid of it during our next turn. So we're going to see a Mega Turbo, and that Primal Groudon EX is a step closer to being able to attack. But again, we've just been able to go at the opponent's Pokemon just so quickly that things are not looking good for him whatsoever. Let's go and use that Hypnotoxic Laser. I'm gonna go and actually start loading up some of our bench Pokemon. So let's go and use that Blacksmith to look for 2 Fire Energy cards and latch them on to this Reshiram. I'm gonna go and attach a double colors energy onto this Reshiram as well, so all of our Reshirams are now able to attack. Let's go and use the Outrage, hitting our opponent for 40 damage. I know that the opponent's Landorus is not going to lose its life just yet, but we should be able to attack the opponent's Primal Groudon EX during our next turn, unless again we see our opponent pull out a Fort Switch, which would absolutely blow my mind, because I mean at this point he's already made use of 3 switch cards in their deck, which I think is actually quite a bit. So it looks like we're going to see another end card, but that's okay. Again, we still have the Trainer's Mail, so that should hopefully allow us to draw onto some card that will allow us to ultimately make use of Blacksmith or something like that. Our Reshiram's going to take 20 damage, and it looks like the opponent decided not to retreat that Landorus. I thought we were going to see the Primal Groudon EX coming out, but looks like that's not what the opponent was thinking. Alright, let's go and use that VS Seeker for a Blacksmith card. Blacksmith to attach 2 Fire Energy cards onto that Reshiram, and then I'm gonna go and use that Trainer's Mail and see what I'd like to grab into. Silver Bangle would be pretty good. Ultra Ball, I mean we don't really have any more Pokemon remaining in our deck, so I think Silver Bangle is what I'm gonna go for this time. Alright, let's go and grab out that Silver Bangle. Let's go and use that Blue Flare attack, hitting that Primal Ground EX for 140 damage. We're getting dangerously close to being knocked out, and it still hasn't even attacked us, but we're going to be finally seeing the first attack, hitting us for a massive 260 damage. My goodness, that is a lot. Let's see, which one of our Pokemon, I mean, I think all, okay, looks like we're going to see the opponent quitting the game, and that is understandable, but yeah, I think that is going to be it for today, guys. So thank you guys very much for watching. Again, be sure to check out those annotations if you guys